I was addicted to food and no one knew or could understand what I was going through. Hey guys, it's Tiffany, and as you guys can tell by the title of this video, we are going to be talking about something serious that I've actually never told you guys. This morning I actually woke up thinking I was going to film a really happy and bubbly video. I don't know, I went on YouTube, I was getting ready, I was doing my makeup, and a video popped up on my YouTube feed, and it was about someone who struggled with their eating disorder. Just letting you guys know, this video is gonna be so choppy. Also, if I smile, it's just because it's a nervous tick of mine and it's just something I do. The reason I'm making this video is because I recently made 2 videos. The first one I made was a video on life hacks on how to eat healthy, and a lot of the comments that I got in that video were, "Oh, good job, Tiff, you're gonna make people have a ton of eating disorders." I felt like I was really triggered by those comments because I actually did go through an eating disorder. The tips and hacks I was talking about actually helped me form a better, more healthy relationship with food, and I feel like this is something that I just need to address and talk about. I guess we're gonna get started. So my entire life growing up, I never really ate a lot, and that wasn't because I was ever trying to starve myself. I never really thought of food as anything other than food. I didn't have a big appetite. I would eat enough and I'd be fine. And I remember it would get pretty bad where I would actually faint. I would faint a lot. I would go through these fainting spells and I never realized why. And it was because when I was a kid, I wouldn't eat until it was like 5 p.m. I was a really self-sufficient kid where at 6 years old, I was making myself meals. Like I was cooking ramen on the stove. I was making eggs and omelets. I remember when I was 6 years old, I was making my next door neighbor, her name was Abby. I would make her these cheese omelets that were so amazing. But I remember I was like probably 10 or 11 and my doctors actually told my parents that I was malnourished. And that wasn't because my parents weren't feeding me or making sure I was getting fed. They always fed me. I just never really ate a lot. And I'm such a slow eater that my parents, I don't think, ever realized that because I was eating so slow, I actually wasn't eating that much. I remember one time my grandma asked me to come over and help her cook. And this was 4 p.m. and she didn't live too far. She was like a 15-minute walk. So I started walking to her house. It was like, I don't know, 90 degrees outside, and I was walking and I got to her house and I started helping her prep. I was like cutting onions or celery or something, and I fainted right in front of my grandma. I really don't know what happened. I think I woke up a few minutes later and she was crying, bawling, tears down her face, and I just remember being like, okay, like, Tiffany, you need to take better care of yourself. I didn't want my grandma to be worried about me. I didn't want to faint all the time. And so I started forming a different relationship with food where I was making sure I was feeding myself, but making sure I was feeding myself also made me always think about food. Food was always on my mind. Always. Always, always, always. But thankfully, I had fast metabolism. I was super active as a kid. I did gymnastics, I did cheer, I played basketball with my friends. I was always running around outside, and I never really gained weight as a kid. And fast forward to high school, same thing. I could eat whatever I wanted. My sisters and my parents always made sure I was eating, and I was just eating. So my senior year of high school, I didn't do volleyball. That was the first year I didn't play any sport. And honestly, it was the first year I realized that I gained weight. So I gained about 10 pounds my senior year of high school. Beginning of senior year, I was probably 92 pounds. And towards the end of senior year, I was like 102, maybe even 105 pounds. A 10-pound difference on my body, it's 10%. Like, think about how much you weigh right now and think about gaining 10% of your weight on your body, and you probably wouldn't be happy either. Even though I gained weight and I was kind of self-conscious about it, I didn't care too much. I was really happy. I was getting amazing grades. I was valedictorian. I delivered our graduation speech to my senior class. I had really good close friends. I was also the anchor of my news show in high school, so people knew who I was. Passed all my AP exams. I was going to UCLA. I felt great. I was happy. And then I went to UCLA, and I realized in high school I was a big fish in a small pond, and when I went to UCLA, I was a tiny little baby fish in this massive ocean of people who are cultured, who are beyond smart, who are taller, who are better looking, who have connections, who are rich, who are wealthy, who are like this, and that. I didn't know anyone going into UCLA. I had my boyfriend, and that was it. Like, my boyfriend was the only other person I knew at UCLA. No one from my high school went to UCLA except me. Everyone went to UC Davis or UC Berkeley. My freshman year of college, I wasn't doing well in school. I wasn't doing terrible, but I wasn't getting the A's. I was getting A minuses, B's, and I felt like I had no control over my life. I also lost 10 pounds my first quarter of UCLA, and I did that without even trying. I didn't even know I was losing weight. I was going back to those habits I had when I was 8 or 9 years old, where I just wasn't feeding myself because I was living in a dorm room all on my own. No one was making sure I was eating, and I was also just too embarrassed to eat by myself. If I was going to go to a dining hall, I would make sure I had friends with me. I've always been a shy person where I can't make plans with people. People have to make plans with me. So I never really was making plans with people to eat. And because of that, I wasn't eating because I didn't want people to see that I was eating by myself. And I lost a ton of weight. I was down to probably 90 pounds. I also broke up with my boyfriend of like 6 months. Fast forward to February, and that's when I met John. So as you guys know, John was my boyfriend for 6 years. The first 2 years, we were just dating, but like officially, I guess 4 years, but non-officially 6 years we've been dating. As you guys know, we're not together anymore. John and I started hanging out like mid-February, end of February. That's kind of when we met each other. And I would use eating as an excuse to hang out with him. And John is like such a good student. He would never hang out with me. I never knew how to hang out with John unless it was involving eating. So I would always tell John, like, hey, like, I'll swipe you in for a free meal. Like, come hang out with me. Let's just eat. And literally that was the only time we would hang out. And I was eating 3 meals a day. My metabolism went to shit when I wasn't eating anything. So when I started eating a ton, because I met John and John and I became really good friends really fast, my metabolism was just grabbing onto any of the food I was eating. I went up to 110 pounds. I lost 10 pounds, then I gained 20 pounds in a matter of 4 months, I want to say. And that was because I was finally happy. I like kind of figured out myself. I got into the groove of UCLA. I was doing a little bit better in school. I found some friends that I really enjoyed hanging out with that were like really true good friends that I'm still friends with to this day. And I found my passion and love for food again. I loved going to dining halls. I would eat massive amounts of quantities of food. Breakfast was my jam. I was eating 3 giant meals 3 times a day. Breakfast, lunch, dinner. Eating it. And I gained 20 pounds. And it's the heaviest I've ever been. For me, always naturally being 95, 98 pounds, being 108 pounds scared me. And I went through this stage of orthorexia. So the heaviest I was at 108 pounds, and that was the summer between freshman and sophomore year of college. I knew I was heavy, but it didn't bother me because I was just really, really happy with where I was at. I was gonna be moving into my sorority house with 50 of like my closest friends. I was taking summer classes, getting amazing grades. I was at the top of my class for economics, and I was just gonna have a bomb year sophomore year. I just felt it in my bones. Like, sophomore year was gonna be an amazing year. So I started living in my sorority house my sophomore year. And what's really cool about living in a sorority house is that you have a personal chef. So we had a personal chef that cooked us really healthy meals. And during that time, I lost a little bit of weight without trying because I was just eating better. I had set meal times, and I also decided to run for VP of finance for my sorority, and I won. I didn't win because no one ran against me, but I became our kind of treasurer of my sorority. So things started changing for me a little bit after I became elected as treasurer. I wanted to be an example of like who our sorority is, and I felt like if I was skinny, I would be respected. Fast forward to January, a lot of things changed in my life. UCLA is on a quarter system, so every single quarter you get new classes. So winter quarter of my sophomore year, I decided I wanted a job. So I got a job at our gym at UCLA, and I also started taking this new class that was about health and fitness, which wasn't a good idea for me. This class was about nutrition, health, fitness, diet, pretty much everything you shouldn't be taking in class if you have an eating disorder, because my professor would openly talk about how to lose weight effectively. That just all got in my head. And during this time, I also started a new position as treasurer of my sorority. So all the presidents and vice presidents of our sorority decided to take a bonding trip together in January to a cabin in the mountains by this beautiful lake so that we can bond together and we can have snowball fights and drink hot cocos. I guess no one on our board thought we should have real meals. No one really brought real food on our trip to the cabin, and since we were snowed in inside of this cabin, there wasn't really a place to get groceries. And so for 3 days straight, me and all of my friends were eating such bad food. We were eating peanut butter M&Ms, which I discovered, which are amazing. We were eating chocolate covered pretzels. We were eating s'mores, hot cocoa. We weren't eating real food. And I just remember me and my best friend Amy, who was also my roommate, we came back from that trip feeling disgusting. Me and my best friend Amy made a pact with each other. We were like, okay, we are gonna eat healthy. I literally felt sick from eating junk food. I was turned off by junk food. Like, I had so much junk food in those 3 days, I didn't want to have junk food anymore. So for me, this pact that we made wasn't that difficult. And I was so focused on a clean eating lifestyle, I would want to say I developed orthorexia. And if you're not familiar with that, you eat so healthy, it consumes your life. You calorie count, you make sure that whatever you're eating doesn't have too many saturated fats or oils or anything that's bad for you. And it was easier because for me, my best friend at the time, Amy, was doing the exact same thing, or so I thought. Later, I find out one day I come home from class, I open the door, and I see my friend Amy eating a bag of Oreos or something that wasn't very healthy. And I look at her and I go, Amy, what are you doing? She looks me dead in the eyes and goes, sorry, Tiffany, I actually haven't been eating that healthy, but I've been pretending I was eating healthy because you were doing so well. And when I realized she actually wasn't eating healthy that entire time, I don't know what it is, but something in my brain clicked that, holy cow, finally, I'm so happy she wasn't eating healthy. This is my time to shine and not eat healthy. And I just went down this little rabbit hole. I became crazy. I don't even know how to talk about this. So I developed binging eating habits. And I wasn't purging, I wasn't throwing up at the time. I was eating 8 brownies every single night, a bag of pretzels every single night. I just used the excuse that Amy had been eating unhealthy as my excuse to, you know what, I need to make up for the last month of me eating so healthy. I'm just gonna eat whatever I want. And that triggered a lot of things because it made me feel guilty. I started feeling really guilty of everything I was eating, to the point where one day I decided to throw it up. And I'm not gonna lie, talking about purging really bothers me. I had never thought I would become bulimic until I heard a friend of mine talking about her recovery of bulimia. When she first told me her story, I was really curious because I had never known anyone that had bulimia. I always thought it was in the movies, like in documentaries, but I didn't realize it actually affected real people that I knew. I was really supportive of her. I wanted to know how it happened, why it happened. But I started asking her some really unhealthy questions of was it hard? What foods are easier to binge? I kind of manipulated her into telling me more than I'm sure she wanted to tell me, or telling me things she probably wouldn't have told me if she knew the reason I was asking them. I was like, oh, she said she lost weight doing this. Maybe I should try doing this because clearly I can't handle eating junk food without feeling guilty. I was like, oh, like maybe if this helped her, it could help me. Even though she was telling me all the negatives about it, all I could see were the positives. That night, I tried to purge. I could not physically make my body do it. And I was devastated because I felt like a failure, like I couldn't do something. I was crying doing it, and I was also crying because I couldn't do it. And then I saw my friend again, and I asked her more questions. I tried to make it seem like she was bringing it up, but really, I brought up the conversation to her. I wanted to know which foods were best to eat when you were purging. I wanted to know how she was able to purge. I wanted to know such bad things. So she was opening up more about the conversation, and I became obsessed. I have scars from my knuckles for shoving my fingers down my throat. I was in such a bad headspace. I was taking these classes that were telling me how to look good. And on top of that, I was working at a gym, became really good friends with people who also worked at the gym who would not let themselves eat unhealthy. I remember I entered a cookie baking contest with a friend, and we actually won. And this friend of mine would not let themselves eat the cookies they had just made. I think they wanted to split one cookie with me. So both of us split this like tiny little cookie, like maybe this big, with each other. And I remember I was like, wow, I feel so self-conscious even eating this measly half a cookie in front of this person. And I was even embarrassed to like the cookie that we made that is obviously good because we won the cookie baking contest. And I became friends with those people that were just not healthy for me, and I don't think I was healthy for them either. But none of us talked about it. And because I was surrounded by people in the gym all day, I was always surrounded by girls that were tiny AF. There were for sure some girls that I knew had eating disorders that were always at the gym, and I was comparing my bodies to theirs. And I became so obsessive that I was working out all the time. I would do a 5 a.m. shift at the gym, and we would get a 15-minute break. Instead of eating or resting during my break, I was actually working out. And then after my shift, I would work out. Then I would go to like my 9:30 or 10 a.m. class. And then after my class, I would work out again, go to my next class and work out again. Like all my free time was based around food and working out. I remember I don't even like black coffee, but I started liking black coffee because I wasn't allowed to put sugar in my own coffee. Things got pretty bad with my binging habits where I was physically embarrassed if someone saw me eating, if they saw me eating anything that wasn't healthy. But when my friends weren't looking, I was eating pretty badly. I think the lowest point for me, I remember this day so clearly. So my sorority chef, he would make us dessert every single night for dinner. I remember he made us a strawberry shortcake and then made a second dessert, which were brownies. They were very good. And so every time during dinner, I would eat my dinner, act normal, act like nothing would happen. And of course, I would purge right after dinner. But once our chef was done with dinner, he would put everything back in the kitchen. I would sneak into the kitchen, find the dessert, and start shoveling as much dessert in my mouth as I could. Our kitchen was closed, but it wasn't locked, so anyone could walk into our kitchen. And when someone would walk into our kitchen and I happened to be shoveling food down my throat, I would pretend that I wasn't just shoveling 4 brownies in my throat. I was actually washing the dishes or cleaning up or looking through the fridge. I would throw whatever I was eating on the floor or like hide it in my pocket and then pretend I was like washing my hands. When they would leave, I would start shoveling the food down my throat again. And right after I would shovel the food down my throat, I would feel really guilty. I would feel so guilty that I was like, okay, the only way this would be right is if I threw it all up. So I would throw it up. And to be honest, I'm surprised no one in my sorority knew I was bulimic because I was always in the bathroom. So that one particular night, I threw up, came back downstairs, ate 2 more brownies, felt guilty, went back upstairs, threw up some more, came back downstairs, ate some more brownies, felt guilty again, went back upstairs, threw up, and I did this 7 times in one night. After the 7th time I purged, I was like, this is it. This is your last time. You're not gonna go downstairs and eat another brownie. You're just gonna go right to bed and just stay in bed until it's the morning time. And that's exactly what I did. I felt helpless. I felt stupid. This is not me. I didn't have control of my life, and the only control I had was purging, because when I was eating, I had no control over the amounts I was eating. And I was slightly hurt that no one suspected anything, because to me that was like, if they don't suspect you're losing weight or they don't suspect you're bulimic, that's because you're not losing enough weight. That was my mindset, was like, well, no one knows I'm doing this, so I'm going to keep doing it until someone notices, and no one noticed. And that's the thing with bulimia, is that you're actually at a healthy weight. You look healthy, and I think no one suspected anything because I was also eating. I wasn't anorexic, I was still eating, and they knew I was eating, they just didn't know I was binging it. When I would throw up, I felt like I actually had gained weight in my face. I was actually getting bigger in this area, and I'd always had a baby face, but my face was definitely more pronounced, and I was even more self-conscious about that. So it was this vicious cycle. My friends don't think I have a problem, so I must not have a problem. And my friends didn't see the problem because me throwing up actually made my face bigger, and because my face was bigger, I kept doing it because I wanted my face to be smaller. And that was just a low point for me. I got to a point where I was throwing up every single thing I was eating. It could be like a tiny snack, like an apple. Someone would offer me a bite of ice cream and I wanted it to seem normal, so I would eat it, and right away I would run to the bathroom and throw it up. I think being honest with yourself first is the most important step. I don't think I ever realized I had a problem until I got my wisdom teeth pulled out, and I have a really high pain tolerance. So that same day I got my wisdom teeth pulled out, I was eating a bunch of chicken fettuccine alfredo with my mom, and I was also throwing up, and I just had my wisdom teeth pulled out. My dentist told me not to do certain things, and I was doing all of those things, and I think my dentist kind of knew but didn't say anything because my teeth were pretty bad. And she kind of made a comment that was like, ooh, but maybe she knows, or like maybe she thinks she knows. And that same night I binged, and then I purged at least twice. I shouldn't have. I had my wisdom teeth pulled out, and that was such a low for me. But that was when I first realized I had a problem. But that wasn't when I stopped. I happened to be home this time. I think it was summertime. I was home. And I love hanging out with my sisters. We decided to go to San Francisco. We went to Pier 39. We went to a clam chowder spot. That's my favorite place ever. Holy cow. I think it's on Fisherman's Wharf. They have literally the best clam chowder. And I felt so guilty for eating so much of my clam chowder that I decided to, you know what? F it. I'm gonna go to the bathroom right this second, even though my sisters want to like go to the pier. I'm just gonna spend 30 minutes purging. And this restaurant that I went to happened to have kind of like an outdoor bathroom, but there were only 2 bathroom stalls total for guys and girls, and I took up one of the stalls for 30 minutes, and I was purging, and I was kind of playing music, but I'm pretty sure people kind of knew what I was doing because I was in there for so long. And I remember I got the dirtiest looks I've ever gotten in my entire life when I walked out of that stall. And I don't know if it was because I was taking so long or if because people knew that I was throwing up in there. And I broke down and I told my sisters what was going on. That was the turning point for me. I finally admitted it to myself. I had a problem. And I finally told my sisters, and they were so supportive. I feel like a lot of things have triggered why I started my eating disorder. My family is very honest with one another. We're so honest. We don't sugarcoat things. We're not babied. I've always been given tough love. My family is the first people to be like, you've gained weight. You've lost weight. Your nose looks weird. Your hair looks weird. I remember one time my aunt did tell me that I was not the prettiest out of my sisters. I was the ugly duckling. I felt like I was always the ugliest. If I were to ever have kids, I think I would give my kids tough love, but I would never, ever make them feel insecure about anything about themselves. And my parents never made me feel insecure. It was like the other adults that were in my family that surprisingly did not have kids. For me, my recovery took a while after I told my sisters. And to be honest, this time in my life was kind of a blur. I don't really know how I went from having a really unhealthy relationship with food to forming a really healthy relationship with food. It happens over time. It's not quick. I'm not gonna lie. Like, that time in SF wasn't the last time I purged. It took me a while to open up to people. And now when I do open up to people, I remember the first time I opened up to John. He was so surprised, was very protective of me during that time, which at the time I hated, but I think I also needed. I remember someone made a comment in front of me and John where they were like, oh, like, look at this big meal. Like, let's get so full, we're gonna have to like throw up afterwards. And he was not happy that that person made this comment. And I just remember being like, oh, like, this is the worst person you can make this comment to, because I wasn't triggered by it, but John was definitely triggered by it. When I was eating, I had no control about how much was going in my mouth. And with purging, that was the feeling of control that I craved. You know, I lost control while I was eating, but I'm taking back my control by throwing it all up. That's why I'm so proud that I have such a good relationship with food now. I don't restrict myself and I don't believe in calorie counting. That's why when I made the videos I was making, I was telling you guys, please don't calorie count. The calories you eat don't tell you how much your body actually needs. I go through stages where I crave candy and I don't. I go through stages where I crave pizza and I don't. And what I do now is I just listen to what my body wants. And it took years. It really did take years. It took years of being told as a kid that I was the ugly duckling. It took years of thinking that orthorexia was healthy. It was years of not listening to what my body needed and what my body wanted. It was years of thinking I wasn't good enough in college. It was years of thinking that I needed attention from certain types of people when I don't. And I'm laughing about it because when I talk about my past, I don't even think it's the same with Tiffany. Like, this person I'm talking about is not the person I am right now. It's not even close to who I am right now. It's nowhere near it. When people tell me that I'm triggering people to have eating disorders because of the videos I'm making, that triggers me because I don't think what I'm preaching is anything negative. I wish someone told me I could have a healthy relationship with food. I wish someone told me it's okay to eat candy. It's okay to eat junk food. It's okay to eat whatever you want. Just listen to what your body wants. I wish I had someone who was like me right now that would have picked my old self up. Because when I was going through all this, no one noticed. And with bulimia, it's so hard for people to notice that someone has a problem, because when you're bulimic, you're a normal weight. You're not losing a bunch of weight. You might lose a little bit of weight, but you still look healthy, or you might even gain weight because what you're doing is you're binging and then you're purging. If you guys know someone that has the symptoms of bulimia, please just talk to them. I feel like if someone had just talked to me earlier, or had just noticed earlier, I would have stopped what I was doing earlier. And it was a vicious cycle. So I'm gonna have a number you guys can call right here if you think you have an issue or you wanna talk to somebody. It's a national hotline. It'll be super helpful. I felt like I couldn't fully recover until I admitted to myself and to other people that I had a problem. I'm gonna keep talking about it, even though I was really scared to talk about it, because I'm really scared people are gonna think I'm talking about this for views or for attention, when I want to talk about this so that I can help someone else that's literally going through what I'm going through. Your self-worth does not come from how other people perceive you, but it's how you perceive yourself. You are enough. You are more than enough. Think of that. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye, guys.